So how is it going?
Good.
That's good. I'm glad to hear that.
Considering. How are you doing?
Not too bad, not too bad. Just hanging out here with I got one of my mascots here.
Oh.
Decided to she decided to come bomb the video.
Nice.
Oh.
They're so big.
Yeah.
How many months is it now?
She's about a year old now.
Oh,
Actually,
wow.
are you a year? I still feel like she's so tiny though. We still haven't
Right.
gotten her neutered yet because I feel like she's still a baby. Like we got
hmm
Axel neutered a few months back, but he's triple her size basically. So
So is he just eating more or just not letting her eat?
um I think it's just genetics. He's definitely more rapacious when it comes to the appetite for sure.
hmm
She's just naturally predisposed to being smaller, I think. So, ladies and gentlemen, I am beyond honored and proud to have my friend Jen of Weaver Crafted on with me today. Jen has been helping me out behind the scenes for a couple years now, right? You've been making and editing all kinds of videos. Uh,
Yeah.
also well, she started out as a customer, but became a friend because we just have a really good
Oh,
symbiotic relationship.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So Jen,
Yeah.
thanks so much for taking the time to come on today. I'm super excited to have you here. So,
Yeah. Thanks for having me. I don't know. I think we've known each other probably close to 3 years. So
yeah,
been we've been planning to do this, but kind of like pushing it and
forever.
yeah,
We've
but
been planning this literally forever.
yeah. But here we are,
Here we
and
are. I'm stoked to finally make it happen. So as part of this talk, I apologize in advance. This talk is going to go all over the place, ladies and gentlemen, because as you know, we don't just talk boots on this channel. Sometimes we talk other things, conspiracy, government cover-ups, murder, UFOs, chemtrails, the second son,
yeah,
Sasquatch. I
yeah.
mean, the list goes on, and it's going to go on. So this will be a wild ride.
It'll
So
be all over the place.
yeah, yeah. So grab your gummies or whatever the kids are doing these days and strap in because we're going to be going everywhere. But we are also going to keep it to boots.
Yeah.
Next to me, I have several boxes of mystery boots that I haven't necessarily revealed to the world yet. They're still in the box, still unworn. And this happens when you're an insane person like me and you've got over 100 pairs. It's just going to happen that some boots you're going to get in and they're just going to go straight to the back inventory. They're going to be ready for later, sometimes years down the line. I have some boots here that I've never shown on camera, and they're some of them are years old. So, do you have anything like that that you were planning today on, or?
Not really. I just wanted to show these boots, these shell Cordovan barefoot, but it's
Ooh,
just
nice.
yeah, they've gotten through some rain, so there's like some rain spots on them,
Oh, very cool.
but these are, I guess, my grail boots, and that's one of my first questions for you is, what's your grail boot that you would never sell, and it's like very meaningful to you?
Rail boot that I could never ever part with. Very meaningful. Oh, this is a tall ask, but it's probably gonna be just off the top of my head, my Viberg 2040s in dark oiled brown shinky horsehide. Here they are.
Nice.
And I think it's just partly because it's the service boot. It's so classic. And one thing that I really like about Viberg is they really try to nail the honor and keep alive the heritage of the World War II service boot. I'm just in love with that idea, and the more I watch Viberg, the more they're sort of chasing that logos, if that's a good word for it, or that
Mhm.
they're kind of still they're pursuing the idea of the service boot still to this day, which is cool. It's very much like a vision, and they continue to this day to pursue that, using different leathers, different lasts, but they're still going for that historically accurate yet modern iteration of a service boot. And obviously there's a lot to pursue there, but it writ large, that's why I think those sort of personify and exemplify the image of like a rugged World War II boot. Because my grandpa was in World War II, and
Right.
in America, that's a very important time in our history. So it's something that
Yeah.
a lot of people still study and sort of honor that legacy, I guess. And so that's for me coming from like a veteran family, that's why it has like sort of a sentimental value behind it. But that said, there are many, many boots I would not part with.
Mm.
Those are just the top ones that come to my mind. How about you?
Yeah, that's just the one I brought up. It's because it's
Okay.
shell and I've got your kilties on there.
Ooh, nice to see that.
Um,
Awesome.
but it's just extremely comfortable and then the rolls are just so cool. Um,
Yes.
yeah,
Super
so it's
cool.
just easy to put on, easy to take off, and then they almost feel like socks.
Yeah.
So that's why I love them so much. But I'm going through a phase of like getting rid of a lot of my Fortis boots and things like that, just to because I like that zero drop. Not a fan of heels anymore because it just creates a lot of pain in my feet.
Oh, really?
So
Okay.
yeah, like I tried wearing more stacked heels and it just I can't stand for long. I can't walk for long. And so I'm like, all right, got to go with the flatter barefoot style. So that's kind of a segue of like I want to try to re-sole them and
Mhm.
like reconstruct them and then put like a flatter sole on them. So it's gonna be a process.
Yeah, absolutely. Are you planning to resell them yourself?
Yeah, I bought
Okay.
two different last. So
Oh,
we'll see
really?
what's the best fitting one, but it's I'm gonna rip it apart. Like I've done I guess tear aparts of boots before on like my Instagram and stuff and
Okay. Yeah. You know,
we'll see how it goes.
yes, absolutely. That's one thing that it's so embarrassing. I should have by now built my first boot, but I haven't. I have a pattern. I have not started it yet. I'm terrified, frankly. I'm terrified of it.
Do you have a leather that you want to do or like a mismatch?
Yeah, so I think the first one that I do build, it's gonna be a prototype. I'm gonna use probably a crappier leather, but oh, let me grab these. Right, sorry. So I just got these in. These are an Italian veg tan, Fluido oil, I think it's called. And this stuff, it looks like shell. So it's yeah, this color is called jeans, which is it's like a blue marbly color. You can see the oh
Wow.
there you go. I would love to make shoes boots out of this.
Is there any pull up to it or?
Yeah, yeah,
Ooh.
there's a lot and it smells really good too.
Mm.
Let me see.
Where'd you get that from?
Maverick, they just ran
Okay.
a mega sale, like buy two, get the third hide free. And
That's
so
how
I
they get
just
you.
yeah, that's how they get you. I loaded up, I spent over a grand. Like I just, but I wanted
Right.
to try new leathers that I never tried before. So this one's called Peli Gaucho Oil and it looks and feels like shell. It's obviously like a lower temper. Actually, there
Hmm.
might not be pull up. Do you see any? I haven't really tried it.
Yeah, it's a little bit.
Okay.
And it's,
Yeah. Yeah,
did you
there.
say horsehide or did you say just regular cowhide?
This is cow.
Okay.
Yeah,
Wow.
this is bovine. But somehow they process it into something that looks like shell cordovan to me. Um,
Wow.
obviously looser, a little bit looser temper, but it's still very tight grain. And this, for comparison, this one looks very much like my Mark Alberts and Shinky shell.
Mm,
So that's why I'm thinking like if I could figure out how to build a boot, I'd love to build them in this because
right.
I was gonna run kilties in this stuff, but it's too nice. Like
Yeah.
have to do bags or a boot or something.
Hmm.
We'll see. But I also just not to turn this into a plug, but I also just got some chrome pack in that I was just outside photographing. 3 colors
Nice.
of chrome pack and it's pebble green. It's been embossed. So I got turquoise, navy, and this brown whiskey color. So get ready to release those. I'm excited about those. The turquoise is really pretty.
Is there a pull up to those?
Um, good question. A little bit, yeah, but it's hard to see it through the embossed
Mhm.
grain.
Right.
It's hard to see it. But what's crazy is you flip over. Look at that.
That's really cool.
That would make a cool boot.
Yeah.
The reverse of the chrome pack. Before we really, really get started, I want to ask you, how did you fall into this industry or into this world?
Right.
Because frankly speaking, this is usually like a space for bros to bro out,
Yeah.
man.
I
And there's not
think
normally many females, so I'm just curious how you
right.
found your way.
Well, I th I was watching like a I think it was like a Wong Fu Productions video. It's like an mostly an Asian, I don't know, bros video.
Okay.
But one of the guys was wearing a G-Star like t-shirt, and I was like, "What is G-Star?" So I did went down a rabbit hole of G-Star, and they had like raw denim and things like that. I'm like, okay, this is interesting, and to see the fades, and then it went down into going through different forums of raw denim. And then this was like in probably 2012.
Oh,
And then I just went down the rabbit hole of like, start out with Naked and Famous and 316. And then I was like, well, what could be better? And there was an Ironheart. And I just went through that whole, and then, but they would always show off their boots with their jeans and showing the salvage. So I was like, all right, I got to get into boots now.
yes.
So, and then I went into one of those forums that had the Viberg sample sales and started getting a bunch of Viberg sample sale boots, and
Oh, okay.
that's how it all came about. But like, I just wanted heritage, long-lasting quality, and they didn't make that for women. So I was like, well, I
True.
just suck it up and go
Yeah.
for it. And I was like, whatever. The styles of the more, I guess, masculine. It was always kind of like I've always been sort of a tomboy, so I was like, yeah, it works, whatever. I don't not really. I'll wear dresses for special occasions and girly things, but mostly I'm just like casual, so it kind of works for my style.
Yeah, definitely. So let me ask you this. This is something that I've been meaning to ask a female for a very long time. How do you size, if you're going to buy a man's boot, how do you
Mhm.
translate your size into men's boots? Because you do buy men's boots sometimes, right? Like
Yeah,
if you can't find the woman's version available. Like Grandstone offers some amazing women's boots now,
yeah.
but it wasn't always like that, right? So how do you size? How do you know how to size?
It's usually like a size down. So if, for example, I usually wear a women's eight, 8.5, and that translates to more of like a seven or a
Okay.
6.5, depending on the boot. If it's more flat or if it's more heeled, if it's got a different type of last. So it's basically an experiment.
Yeah.
And so luckily, Viberg at the time were having smaller sizes that were like a five or a 5.5 in UK because their sizing is kind of weird.
Yes.
So I was able to fit those, but at the time in the early like 2012, 2014, there wasn't a lot of women's sizes. So I was stuck with trying the Red Wings and things like that because they had the smaller sizes. But
Hmm.
eventually, I think it was maybe Grantstone that they had also this like a 6.5 to 6. So that's how I kind of got into that.
Okay, got it. Got it.
Yeah.
That's good to know because I'm always on the hunt for boots for my wife, and she rarely is ever drawn to any boot. But it's so funny. Recently, I wore my what's it called? Oyster Shell Rambler Truman boots. They're on the 79 last, and it's like a light purple color, and it's the only leather that I could pull off purple in as a man because it's just so rugged looking that despite the color, it's still very manly looking. She's like, "Oh, I love those. I love those. See if you could have Vince make me a pair of those." And I'm like, "Okay, first
Yeah.
off, I've worn these 5 times. You're just now noticing them." Second off, like she's coming in so late to the game, and I don't know how to source it, and I wouldn't even know like how to size her either. So it's just like it's really complicated. I was just thinking, maybe I'll just throw in a bunch of insoles and she could wear them instead. But they obviously look like
Right.
cakes on her foot. So, but yeah, it's really an uphill climb for women because women's fashion tends to move quicker and what's trending, women consume much more than men, whereas men are more like we're drawn to fewer, better things. Well, most of us are. But then, yeah, for women who want something heritage, you're really fighting an uphill battle. It's a shame because I wish there were more options for you. That's why I'm happy to see like Grant Stone stepping it up. And so you mentioned the Viberg sample sale. I was just last month. I was in what was it? It was a Viberg. They were clear. I don't know what was going on. They were clearing out their inventory, and it was like this weird WhatsApp thing that I got invited to. And basically all it was whoever was at Viberg posting this stuff, they'd take a picture of boot. They'd pull these boots out of this closet. They'd take a picture of them. They'd say, "Here's the size. Here's the leather," and then you had to immediately DM that guy and say, "Hey, I want those." And they moved probably thousands of pairs of boots during those like 3 days or whatever. And I just remember my phone was just blowing. My phone was literally exploding during this time. I had to turn notifications off, but it was cool watching it. Like there was a few I was interested in, but I didn't end up getting any just because either I wasn't quick enough or other factors. But it was unreal to watch. Was that similar to what you were in on, or
Kind of. It'd
okay?
be these odd times because I was in like mountain time at the time, and I think they were like Pacific, right? So
Yeah,
I'd have to wake up at like weird hours and like be at work and just like, okay, okay, that's my size. Type it in. Go, go, go. But I think at the time I don't think they were as popular.
yeah.
So I was probably lucky enough to get the samples that I got.
Okay, right. I believe that because I'm telling you, that stuff moved quick. And it was so chaotic. It was unbelievably chaotic. But it was part of thrilling to be in on the chase, I guess. But at the same time, like, yeah, it was very weird. What was funny was I saw Kevin Caswell of Caswell Boots. He was part of the group. I'm like, oh man, this is funny. I see some people I recognize, but it was it was almost too much for my brain to handle. You know what I mean? Uh,
Crazy.
it was absolutely insane. So, all right. So here's kind of what I have in mind for the talk. All right. So we'll talk one pair of boots and then we'll talk about a crazy conspiracy and give our thoughts on it. And then we'll transition it back to boots so we could still call this a boot talk and not
Yeah.
you know. But
Gotta mix it up, you know.
yeah, let's mix it up. Let's keep it schizophrenic, shall we?
There we go.
I don't want to stay on any train of thought for too long.
Right.
I want to get inside the mind of the into the insane mind of the Joker and be just all over the place. That's one complaint I get. Dale, your conversations are too linear. They just they're too easy to follow. Why don't you get a little crazy? So that's what we're gonna
They
do.
can't skip around on this. So, you
Right.
know, they're like, what are they talking about now? I don't know.
Why don't we, instead of starting with a boot, why don't we talk about what's your favorite current conspiracy theory?
I want to say Tartaria. Um,
Okay, yes, that's a good one.
should we like back up and talk about how we got into conspiracies to begin with, just to kind of intro everybody to like where we come from and things like that, or what do you think?
Yeah, that's a great idea. Okay, so on my channel, I'm very sort of sheepish about diving into anything that's off the beaten path, just because sometimes when I mention little things like flat Earth, I get just rage comments. And in today's world, it's like, you know, it's almost like you can't play with ideas without the risk of offending somebody, but I'm very
Yeah.
explorative and I cannot help it. Like I have to explore ideas. I have to explore because this life is very mysterious. How the heck did we get here?
Yeah.
We're a bunch of sentient beings on this rock that's just flying through the cosmos. Like, pause. How are we here? Like, seriously, how are we
Hmm.
here? It's an existential thing for me. And so I want to go back to and unpack the earliest knowledge. I want to pursue various paths to enlightenment in order to try to figure things out. This is what, Joe Rogan does. This is what a lot of people do. And I am a Christian, by the way. I used to be an atheist until I realized that it takes way more faith to be an atheist than it is to be a person of faith. Because Christianity just makes it so simple for you, whereas atheism relies on what's it rely on? The biggest miracle of all, the Big Bang, which I just don't buy anymore. So you're telling me the universe was all the matter and energy in the universe was contained within a pinprick sized particle and then it exploded? You mean it like that?
Right.
That's
And where
your
did that come from? You know?
of all the explanations, like that's the wildest thing I've ever heard. That's the most
Hmm.
unbelievable thing I ever heard. And not to mention, okay, so the more you start looking at code, computer code, the more it looks analogous to genetic code,
Hmm.
which to me indicates a creator. Just
Yeah.
somebody had to write this code. It's that simple. And on a recent UAP podcast, one of my favorites, Luis Elizondo, he asked the question, if you wanted to create something that would be here in a million years, what would you create? And why don't you answer? Why don't you take a stab at that one? If you
Right.
create something that would still be here in a million years that people
Hmm.
could observe and understand and look at.
Right. I mean, buildings or like things that wouldn't deteriorate over time. Either that would be probably some sort of being to keep generating, you know.
Ooh, that's a good
So,
answer.
so it's
That's a
like,
good answer.
how do I guess if I were to put it in God's perspective, it's like, what kids, having kids and having them grow and then having them continue that lineage and seeing where would they grow. And it's this legacy of like, I don't know.
That's literally the answer.
Hmm.
Was I wouldn't create some atomic
Hmm.
titanium whatever. I'd
Hmm.
create DNA. Why? Because DNA is self-replicating. So, wow, you really nailed the answer. The kid who was asked that question was a physicist, and he totally botched it. So good job. Kudos to
What,
you for
what
knowing
was
the
his
answer.
answer?
He said he was gonna make like a titanium ball or something and have it rotating around the Earth or some crazy. It wouldn't be there in a million years. Like it
Right.
would eventually lose rotation or crash
Burn
into
up
the planet.
somehow. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, that's a long-winded way, and there's a lot of ways to answer that question. But I very much, if you're not even suspicious after 2020,
Yeah.
then I don't know what to tell you at that point.
Yeah.
If you're
I
not
think,
even imagine living through 2020 and not even being remotely suspicious, right?
yeah. Yeah. I think it's a wake up call for a lot of people during that
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, I hope so. I pray. But how about you? How did you fall into this
Conspiracies or just
world of
questioning.
yeah,
I think
questioning the mainstream?
the mainstream for sure was okay, here's my long-winded story.
Let's go.
Back in like 2015, 2016, my coworker and I would go on daily like break walks around our office building and we would throw like little frisbees around and we were at the top of the parking lot and we're over by the Denver Tech Center at the time. And there's a lot of skyscrapers and like the freeway was right there. And as we were throwing the frisbee around, my coworker was looking up at the sky and I was like, "What are you doing?" It's like, "I see an orb floating." And it looked like about the size of a car about 2 miles away, just hanging out between the skyscrapers. And we're like, "What
Whoa.
is going on?" This is scary. And I tried to get my phone out and it like disappeared. And I was like, "Ah." So I spent like, I guess that afternoon and several days after doing research of like, what did I just see? It was this orb almost mirror-like silver, just floating in a very like weird like this.
Hmm.
And I was just like, okay, this is some kind of unidentified object. And we were looking it up, and there was all these orbs, but they were mostly at night lit up. So I was like, went down that rabbit hole. And then, of course, YouTube with their algorithm starts giving you flat Earth and all these other conspiracy theories and like Disney being the Oculus and things like that. So I went down that rabbit hole. And that was, yeah, close to 10 years now. So,
So you
and
saw a
then,
UAP.
yeah,
That's
basically,
incredible.
yeah.
I've never
And
seen one. I've never seen one with my own eyes. I've seen lots of evidence, video.
mhm.
I mean, we all have by now. Let me take it back to religion. This isn't a modern phenomenon. This thing goes back thousands of years since time immemorial. We have recordings and writings about UAPs, things in the sky moving around like you described, since time immemorial. The Vimanas in the ancient Sanskrit texts, I believe, or Hindu, I forget. But anyways, long story short, I heard a pastor recently who's also been following the subject very closely. He said, this is his conclusion after looking at it for years, those are the fallen angels as is described in the Bible. And the reason why it's kept so secret and the reason why it's such a taboo subject is because this has existential implications. This has biblical implications. It would corroborate a lot of what was talked about in the Bible. If you think of these things as, and here's my theory, I think if these beings were to land, come out, they would just look just like you and me. I don't think they're green, three-eyed aliens from, Mars. I don't think
Mhm.
they're these mutant looking things. I believe they would look just like us. I don't think we'd be able to distinguish a difference, frankly.
Mhm.
So I don't know. What are your thoughts on all that?
My thoughts are I've heard so many people describe them as gray or just like large eyes and things like that.
Yeah.
My interpretation of that would be okay. It would be humans in the future.
Mm,
Say
okay.
the sun covered over, they all had to go underground. So they lost like vitamin D. They lost like most of their eyesight, so their eyes are huge, their color is gray. So I'm thinking they went back in time to try to save humanity. So I'm
Yeah.
thinking either it's some kind of time travel or they're wearing some kind of outer shell, things like
Okay.
that. They're able to either manipulate what they look like to either scare people or make people think that they're outer worldly.
Okay.
So, yeah, I think it's
Yeah.
more of a deception.
Okay. Yeah. I could see that. And you know what I've heard about the Greys actually, and I want to caveat what I said earlier that if a being were to exit the craft, they look just like us. I want to say that most of them would probably look like us, but there are accounts of Greys, of course.
Mhm.
I've never seen a Grey. And I also want to caveat all this with I don't know if any of this is real, right? I don't
Mhm.
know what's real because if I wasn't there to see it with my own eyes, I don't know. I can't confirm. We're just playing with ideas here. We're just playing
Right.
with the material that comes because we're the most highly propagandized population to ever live. Forget World War
Hmm.
II, forget propaganda from Soviet Russia or whatever.
Hmm.
We are the most propagandized population, period. We have stuff coming at us from crazy angles. Like insane subjects. So
Hmm.
I don't know if any of this is real. So please don't check me into the insane asylum just yet. But
Yeah.
it's my understanding that the Greys are actually there's a parallel with the Greys and the aliens as described in the Bible. The Greys, from my understanding, they're automatons. They basically don't make decisions for themselves. They don't even have a real consciousness. They're just sort of
Mm.
they're biological, but they're also sentient drones, if that
Mm.
makes sense. Like they don't
Right.
feel compassion. They're they're just there to essentially do a job, fulfill a function.
Hmm.
What that is, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of data to indicate, they're going after cows and things like that, and
Hmm.
organ harvesting and all this other stuff that again, I don't know. I wasn't there. I haven't seen this stuff personally, but everything that I've seen, yeah, I know Joe Rogan floated the idea that they are humans from the future. Again, I don't know. I've heard it. It's interesting, but I just don't know. That is a very interesting subject because I mean, when you look at physics, we know that you can most people don't know this, but this is very basic physics. This is Einstein's theory of relativity. The faster you go through space, the slower you go through time, right? And so if you were to go, say, 99% the speed of light, okay, so you're experiencing time in the same way, but relative to the rest of the universe, you're going through time much more slowly. So you know, 3 seconds on your watch is still 3 seconds to you, but those 3 seconds could be 90 years to people on Earth. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
The movie Inception kind of did a good job with this. You can slow down your progression through time with speed. This is also true with gravity in areas of high gravitational pull, like in a black hole. Time essentially stops. And so it's thought that if you were to go fast enough, that potentially you could start to go back in time because nature's speed limit is the speed of light. It's
Hmm.
thought that if you could surpass the speed of light, that the theory is the closer you get to the speed of light, the slower time goes. If you could surpass the speed of light, then perhaps you start going back in time. I don't know. I personally think you'd probably just blow up to go that fast. But
What do you think about like wormholes where you can jump into different dimensions or different time periods?
that is beyond my realm of comprehension. I mean, yes, that's theoretical. What
Hmm.
I don't necessarily think there are wormholes. What I think is there is an interdimensional aspect to the UAPs. So this is kind of why social media is so powerful, is because you can't hide it anymore. Information is public now. No, it's not structured anymore. Like we used to have, just a few news channels that just gave us what we were supposed to think. But
Hmm.
now individuals can voice what they find and show what they find. And so it's decentralized, right? Information's decentralized now. Being a student of
Hmm.
language myself, I could tell you that when I'm reading the Bible or when I'm reading an ancient text, the words that they use are specific to that culture, right? And so we can
Hmm.
translate it into English, but we don't
Yeah.
always understand it the way that they meant it, right? And so
Hmm.
when I say the UAP is a fallen angel, it's like, whoa, hold on, lines crossed. What fallen angel is like this thing with wings,
Hmm.
right? With like a halo
Hmm.
around its head that's glowing white. And the UAPs, those are supposed to be three-eyed green aliens. So
Hmm.
why would you say that they're the same thing? You're merging two concepts that are completely foreign to each other
Hmm.
together. And I think it just comes down to how we name things, what words we use to describe
Hmm.
things. A lot of people might describe me as a boot nerd. Some people after this interview are going to describe me as absolutely batshit crazy. Both
Hmm.
are valid descriptions of the same thing.
I, I think it's good to question and to do research and to be open to a lot of things. I don't know. When I see people that are just nonchalant, going through a day in life and not caring and just watch sports or just do the mundane human thing, I don't know. I just feel like there's more to life and there's more to question. And with the UAPs, it's like I think part of it may be just people flying drones, people playing around, or people testing. What I think Elon's brother owns like a drone company that does different entertainment aspects of it. So there's that part of it. I think it's just gonna be more and more, and there's gonna be restrictions on people who have drones. Like
Yeah,
my husband and I own like six drones together. So he's getting his license to do it, and the rules are always changing, and getting licenses not that easy. So it's going to be harder to be able to fly drones commercially anyway. So I
true.
think
To piggyback off that, the restrictions on drones, we have a drone, and I said, "Oh, I'm just going to take it to the park. It's the easiest, most low-key place. Nobody's going to give me any trouble." I set the thing down. I'm about to fly it, and some Karen comes up to me and she goes, "Excuse me, sir, you're not allowed to operate that here." And I'm like, "What? Arc?" I'm not like, but apparently, yeah, there are heavy restrictions on drones. So, okay, so before we continue, let's talk about some boots
boots.
that I've never shown before. These are a pair of Grant Stones
Ooh,
in marbled color 8 shell cordovan. It was a very small run. I believe Wyatt only had three of these made. So
ooh.
yeah, my only Grant Stone cap toe as well. So shell
Wow,
cordovan, leather sole, too nice to wear. So I just haven't done it.
that's nice.
If the aliens come and abduct me, well, they missed the real goods because the real goods are holed up in my closet. Next conspiracy, Tartaria.
Yeah.
So why
Let's
don't you
see.
give us a little rundown of the Tartarian conspiracy theory? And while she's pulling that up, let's hit another pair of boots that I haven't worn. Truman
Okay.
boots. Link to Truman in the description below. These are black bison upland mock toes. Look at that. Haven't worn them. Fun fact, Roseanne
Whoa.
DM'd me about these. He got these the same pair.
Wow.
So,
Those are nice.
yeah, they are gnarly.
This is like an old map from, I want to say, the 1700s.
Okay.
Um, but there's the Grand Tartary, the Tarty Desert. This is basically, I guess, Russia now. There's Europe and Africa, and you can kind of see India. Like the names are very, I guess, old world is the other term for Tartaria. To kind of backtrack on the lineage, Tartaria was a time where things were built very nicely, if
Yes.
that makes sense. Like it would look like churches and I guess castles and things like that look like they would take 20, 30, 50 years to make. But the theory is these kind of buildings are throughout the world. People are claiming, like if you look up this building on Wikipedia, it'll say it was founded in 18, 90 something or 1860 something. The thing is, it's like you founded it.
Yeah, it was
Did you
founded.
find this?
Didn't
Why did
build.
you not say built? They'll say it's built by this architect, and usually it's like a group of 10 different families. Their very young brother like design it, who's like 23. I'm like, how would you design something like this at the age of 23, 24, and then also build throughout like the United States, other cathedrals, other churches, other town halls, and things like that. So it just didn't make much sense. So I guess the theory is that these buildings were already made, and then we or they claim that they built it, they found it, and it only took a year, maybe 2 years to make. And then down the line, 20, 50 years, they would burn the inside of these buildings. Who knows what they're hiding? And then they'll go into reconstruction like the Notre Dame, like
Hmm.
that recently got burned down, and they had to reconstruct the inside of it. There's a whole rabbit hole of buildings, like I guess look up in any major downtown, there's going to be buildings like this.
Yeah.
And they'll look old worldly, very suspicious of everything that's built in the suburbs or in another like nearby town. It's just like, how come we don't make buildings like this anymore?
Right.
You know?
Right. Absolutely. No, you're right. And I've watched a few documentaries on Tartaria. My understanding of it is it was an ancient, almost like Atlantis civilization, an ancient advanced civilization that was global, that lived all over the world, and they built
Mhm.
these magnificent architectural masterpieces. There was a push to rewrite history essentially to say that all of it was made in modern times, essentially within the last 300 years. But there's a lot of people that think that some of these ancient cathedrals that are located within the United States, they go back way further back in time. And I might have just butchered that. I'm not sure, but but yeah, I remember as a kid, and I was talking to my dad about this just recently. We have the Carnegie Museum by us in Pittsburgh growing up, and fantastic museum. And I remember after going to that museum, and it's built up like a Roman, it's got the columns, it's got massive, it's just incredibly built. But I remember after going to the museum, we walked through this other area. It was a massive open hall, and there were like giant statues of like Apollo, and it was like being in an ancient Roman structure building. And I just thought, wow, how beautiful is this? It's not only just massive, but it's so beautifully designed, aesthetically pleasing. Like, and then you look at modern examples of, we're basically building gulags now.
Mhm.
Our modern architecture is so depressing to look at, right?
Mhm.
And so this ties into a larger conspiracy that there's an effort to demoralize us, to get away from things that are beautiful, to champion things that are ugly, and to hold things up that are ugly, and to say it's beautiful when it's not.
Yeah.
And it's just part of the larger effort to demoralize all of us. Now, one thing I'll say against the Tartarian hypothesis is that this is going to disappoint a lot of people. I'm not actually a flat earther. A lot of those guys in those Tartarian documentaries use flat earth terminology. They call this a realm. If somebody says this is a realm we're living in, that's kind of a clue that they're a flat earther. There's other things, but so a lot of those guys that are behind the whole Tartarian hypothesis, it goes hand in hand with flat earth almost. And it's one of those things that I think it's fascinating. I'm not personally sold on it yet, but I do listen to it regardless because I like to listen to differing viewpoints. But it is fascinating. It's absolutely very cool. And I do subscribe to the Atlantis theory, by the way. It sounds, comical at this point, but all Atlantis really was just a group of, it was just a civilization, not of advanced people. Like, they weren't the Jetsons. We don't know a whole lot about their culture, but I do subscribe to the idea that the capital of Atlantis is located at the Ricot structure in
Mhm.
Mauritania. It's got the concentric circles. I mean, this has been all over the internet already, but it's located directly where I believe Solon said it was. So do I think Atlantis was some mythical place? No, I think it was very easily could be understood as just an advanced-ish civilization of people. I don't think they had
Mhm.
electronics. I don't think they had the technology we have today by any stretch. But that's the Rakat structure in Mauritania. And what's interesting about this location is it's not an island. Everybody thinks Atlantis was an island that sunk, but actually Solon never said Atlantis was an island that sunk. He said it was submerged. And
Mhm.
basically after massive flooding happened, the Ricot structure, the path to the Ricot structure became impassable because it was surrounded by mud, essentially swamp, and you
Mhm.
couldn't get there without like sinking through the swamp. It was just
Mhm.
there's no way to get there. So this idea that it was like this perfect island and then it sunk. No, I don't believe that anymore. What Solon actually said was it was submerged. And when you look at the concentric rings, the concentric circles, there's the same number that Solon described. People that are brave enough to venture out there, they do go out there, they find artifacts. You could buy them on the black market, apparently. But it's very dangerous to go out there because you will likely get mobbed and killed by gangs in the area. It's very remote. It's very difficult to get to now. There are like independent archaeologist types that are going out there on their own dime and at their own risk to try to do some excavating and try to figure out
Mhm.
what's going on out there. But I don't think Atlantis is such a bad word as it once was. I don't think it's such a conspiracy theory. They were people just like you and me. They were seafaring, apparently. They weren't very good at warfare, believe it or not. There's not a whole lot known about the civilization other than just little snippets that we have. It sounds outrageous, but you think about it all the time. Like civilizations rise and fall all the time. Just look at an economic map over the last 20 years. You see some countries they rise economically and then there's a crash and then suddenly they're just living in third world conditions for a while. They're obviously not inventing things. They're obviously just trying to survive and they'll do that for a long time. And then some investors come in and give it a fuel injection, if you will, and that props up their economy. Maybe they develop some tourism. Civilizations rise and fall and people live and die. And I don't think it's so outrageous to think that what we call Atlantis could have just been a civilization of people living in Mauritania, probably a mixture of North African races, maybe some of the same stock from ancient Egypt that were living there, and they had magnificent structures. And floods happen today too. We could remember within our lifetimes when the massive flood hit, what was it, Thailand and Southeast Asia really hard and just wiped
Mhm.
people off the map.
Mhm.
These things happen, and so it's not so crazy to, we just have this little sound bite about Atlantis from Solon, but the fact is, this happens within our lifetime, right?
Mhm.
So the point that I'm trying to make is we could take these ideas that sound extraordinary and unbelievable, but then just look at what's going on in our world today, right? And kind of grapple with it in a pragmatic sense that this isn't outlandish. Civilizations have risen and fallen. People, Mount Vesuvius, when that erupted, it killed all of Pompeii. This stuff
Mhm.
happens. Civilizations get wiped out really quickly sometimes, and you're not crazy for believing that. What are your thoughts about Atlantis?
I mostly believe the same theory that you have, that it's in that Sahara close to the Atlantic.
Yeah,
I think there was probably some other areas like the Gulf of Mexico or Gulf of America, that it could be there, maybe close to the Bermuda Triangle, maybe. It seems most logical in the Sahara.
yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, Jimmy from Bright Insight, Jimmy Corsetti. I
Mhm.
love that guy. He is so smart, and he didn't come up with this theory of the Ricot structure in Mauritania. He just popularized it on his YouTube channel,
Mhm.
and he's made several follow-up videos, and all the information that keeps coming out about it just corroborates his theory. So I'm leaning toward, once again, I wasn't there, I don't know.
Mhm.
I wasn't alive, however many 10,000 years ago that Atlantis existed. But what else did Solon say? He said, I'll paraphrase him. He said, "My boy, you think that there was just one advanced civilization in the past, but in fact there were many." All right, so meditate on that for a while, right? And all he's talking about, again, we're not talking about the Jetsons. We're talking about what I think is just seafaring people that were good at trade, that had products that probably circumnavigated the globe. They had ships and they had pretty probably rudimentary technology, but enough to get around and enough to do trade. And that's what at the time constituted a advanced civilization. We're not talking about spacefaring civilizations. We're talking about advanced for the time. And just use common sense, right? So one of the subjects that really fascinates me is the peopling of the Americas. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Solutrean hypothesis. Have you heard of the Solutrean hypothesis before?
No.
Okay, so basically, there's two types of arrowheads. There's the type of arrowhead that's predominantly found throughout North America that most all Native Americans were making, which was the chiseled arrowhead type that we commonly think about. But then the Solutrean hypothesis is sometimes on the East Coast, archaeologists find a different type of an arrowhead. It's a fluted shaped arrowhead, so it's not flat and it's not shaped like, I don't know, in a way to wrap a string around it and tie it to a stick. It's more of like a funnel or a fluted.
Mm.
There's one researcher, I can't remember his name, but he said that basically these two different methods of making these arrowheads are they're two different languages. They're coming from two different
Mm.
civilizations altogether, distantly related civilizations, and we find those same fluted arrowheads in France. So the theory is the Solutrean hypothesis was way before time immemorial. People from Europe made their way to North America. They never recorded it, but they brought their arrowheads with them. These arrowheads are known as the Solutrean arrowheads. I think Solutria is like a cave in France where they found a bunch of these fluted arrowheads. Yeah, serrated points. Okay, so these are Solutrean arrowheads. These are commonly found in Europe, and
Mm.
some are found in America on the East Coast. Florida, Georgia, Carolinas, we find some of these, and they're vastly different from the standard North American arrowheads
Okay.
that you normally think about. And so my point being with that is the oceans are not a barrier, they're a highway, right?
Hmm.
If you're advanced enough to build a craft that could float, you can
Hmm.
make it here. It's not a barrier. People, I believe, for thousands of years prior to this modern era, I mean, by this point, they've already proven that the Vikings made their way here, right?
Hmm.
I think people were coming here well before that. The information got lost due to the sands of time, the passage of history. Not all history that's passed down orally is very inefficient at making its way through the generations.
Hmm.
And so my belief is that, yeah, the Americas were populated not by, the Bering Strait that connects essentially Russia to Alaska.
Hmm.
That area used to be frozen and people didn't cross it. A lot of the prevailing theory up till now for the peopling of the Americas was that, oh, the natives sprinted from Siberia down to Argentina,
Hmm.
down to South America. It wasn't a sprint. Actually, people lived on the Bering Land Bridge because it was frozen. They lived there for thousands of years, generations. They lived on this ice. It wasn't land, it was ice, and they lived there. And before that ice melted, there were civilizations living there, and they were migrating,
Hmm.
percolating through North America downward. One of my favorite things to do is to pull up pictures of the Inuit and or Alaskan natives. There's several groups, but then compare them to Siberian natives, and they look like the same people to me, at least.
Hmm.
And not to really turn this dry, but I just learned of a new theory where they found this is fascinating. Being a language nerd, this got me going here. So it's called the Tlingit Dene Yesayan hypothesis. Let me put that on the screen. The Tlingit Dene Yesayan hypothesis. So basically, one of these languages is spoken in Alaska. And one of these languages is spoken in Siberia by a small group of natives there. And they don't share many words in common. There's only like four words that look like cognates in the entire language. But what researchers, what linguists are finding, or a few that specialize in this area, is that both languages have the same grammar mechanics, basically. And so they're trying to tie these languages that have been, the theory is that these two languages, one in Siberia, one in Alaska, this just proves that, in a sense, that they've proven it through the DNA that there is a link. But
Mhm.
if you could prove that the languages have a common progenitor, that they are the same people, they come from the same source. And essentially the way both languages work, they work unlike any other language in the world, and they have little markers, little grammatical markers to, like, so if I were to go down to the river, the word river would change to reflect that I had gone down to it. And it's the same in both of those languages. No other language has this, by the way. And I'm butchering it because my understanding of the relationship between both are, there's such an enormity of information and I'm so new at it. But essentially, to think about it, it's kind of like when you look at the engine of like a Honda, and then you look at the engine of a spacecraft, they're going to be dramatically different. But
Mhm.
if you look at the engine of a Honda and you compare that to an engine from like a Hyundai, they're pretty much the same. They're different. They have different parts, different manufacture, but they work the same way
Mhm.
grammatically. That's what they're trying to establish. And so if
Mhm.
they are able to prove that, which it's a constantly evolving theory, then they can prove that yes, the majority of North America was populated by people from Siberia. That's what I think. But I do believe that peopling is a complex phenomenon, and I think that, really anything could happen. But I think the how did humans get to North America? I think predominantly they migrated from Siberia across the Bering Strait land bridge, and we're seeing echoes of that within the modern Inuit languages. Now, this is my takeaway. You'll never hear this from anybody else, but my takeaway is languages are fossils. They tell us so, they give so much context for the world. That's why I'm actually in the process now. I'm studying Greek and I want to learn Hebrew. I want to learn Aramaic, but I'm learning Greek right now. And what I'm learning is that these words, they're more than just they hold more than just a meaning. Words, I used to think words were many things. They were a spelling, and they were a sound, and they were a meaning, and they were a pronunciation. So four things. But actually, there's a fifth thing to a word. A word is, it's a relic. It's passed down from antiquity, and it can change and evolve over time. But the more words we understand and the more languages we study, the more it strips away from the mysteries of the world.
Mhm.
I think if you're studying history and you're not studying language, you're missing out on a huge, you're going to be leading yourself blind through that wilderness of history, because without knowing the languages, or at least trying to familiarize with the languages, you're missing out on a large contextual window into those periods. Just to give a little anecdote, studying Greek, I just learned the Greek word for thank you. It's efcharisto. And
Mhm.
efcharisto, when you read it, it looks like it's spelled with an EU. And so I thought, oh, it's like EUX would look like to us, Efcharisto. But then I looked at it, kept looking at it. Something about this word was talking to me. It popped into my head, the epiphany. Our word for Eucharist in Christianity is essentially giving thanks, thanksgiving.
Mhm.
The Eucharist, I believe it's the ritual where we drink the blood and eat the flesh. I believe that's the Eucharist. And we get that from the Greek, which most of the Bible was written in what was called Koine Greek, or Common Greek of the time. We got a lot of the Catholic practices from the Greek language. So Eucharist comes from Eucharisto, which is thank you, giving the thanks.
Mhm.
Thanksgiving sort of a thing. And that's just me looking at Greek for a week, right? I've already uncovered one thing. Like, what other fossils can you find just by analyzing these languages further? You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And so that's what I love about language. That's why I actually made it a recent commitment. I'm going to study languages my entire life, not to be able to translate, but it's for my own
Mhm.
edification, to make sense of the past.
I think my biggest question about like the origins of where people are. Who found Hawaii? Because it's
Mm,
so isolated. You'd have to bump into it
yeah.
somehow, and just that's just weird to me.
Yeah, you're right. That's another story that's fascinating. Apparently, as the story goes, they were Pacific Islanders and they were expert seafarers.
Mm.
And the way that they found Hawaii, and I think this is the way they found Rapa Nui as well, was they would follow birds out to a certain point. Like they'd watch these birds,
Mm.
and every year they'd follow the birds and they'd park their boats. So the next year they'd go out to the last point to where they saw the birds and they'd go there. And then they'd wait for those birds again and they'd draw them closer because the birds knew the birds know how to navigate the flat earth better than we do. They just have a sense. It's probably a geomagnetic sort of sense. They know there's land out there. They just know they have to fly for a really long time to get there. But they knew that Hawaii was there. They knew that Easter Island was there. And so they would just follow these birds. They'd say, okay, we sailed 2 days last time east. So next time let's sail 3 days east and see if we see those birds. They did, and they followed them until eventually they got to Hawaii. Absolutely unreal how that happened. And there's evidence too that there is some Polynesian DNA found within South America along the west coast there. There's some extant DNA remnants that they believe is linked to Polynesian. So, point being, humans have been circumnavigating the globe. We don't have it written down, but it happened. And we could trace that back through DNA and we could trace that back through language. That's why language is so important. Are you ready for another pair of boots?
Yes, I was just gonna say.
Okay. I lied earlier when I said there's only one pair of boots that are purple that I would wear because these are Truman's in purple horse rump, Italian purple horse rump
Mm.
that I still have not worn. And I got them at the same time of my natural horse rump that I use for the Patina Thunderdome. So new and old. Look at that.
So what's stopping you from unboxing and wearing these? Just nothing to match them, just saving them.
Yeah, a few reasons. I didn't film exclusive video reviews for them, but I'm just working on my modern rotation. It's a combination of I haven't filmed video reviews yet, and it's also they're just too pretty. I just kind of want I have enough boots to wear. I just kind of want to keep them in the
Mhm.
box. I don't know.
Mhm.
There's just something nice about having a new pair of boots you haven't worn yet. And,
Mhm.
when you get to this level of the addiction, you start enjoying boots in different ways that normal people
Mhm.
don't. Do you have any boots like that you haven't worn?
Yeah, but it's mostly because I want to get rid of them. So
Okay,
I'm
gotcha.
like I'll keep them pristine to pass on to the next person. So that's
Gotcha.
yeah.
That's cool. You really have good taste. The ones that I have on my website. There's
Mhm.
are there any left that we haven't sold?
There's a
Nope.
couple still left, and I still
Okay.
have more of the Fortis that I'm probably gonna post on my website. And shameless plug that I'll probably do some card wallets,
Oh,
and
cool.
I'm doing a
Super cool.
prototype of it's like a bookmark that's magnetic, and
Ooh,
you can it could be like a fidget toy or you can fridge magnet, all kinds of things. Or also like for wires, you can
okay.
keep them together. So it's multi-use, but this one's made out of shell. I thought,
Ooh,
hey, this is
nice.
cool. But yeah,
Beautiful. So yes, so we let's talk about Weaver Crafted for let's take a break from Atlantis and talk about
right.
Weaver Crafted. You make the card holders.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, you're making those.
And I'm
Um,
thinking of making passport wallets too, but it takes time.
yes, yes.
But I'm gonna do different leathers, post it up, and they'll be up shortly, hopefully.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So what prompted you to start Weaver Crafted and where has it evolved to at this point, would you say?
My fascination with leather, but also I think from inspiration from your stuff and other smaller brands that it's just like it can't be that hard, but it it does take time, dedication, and learning how to sew and learning the different types of leather. And I think I want to be able to A, create my own things, but also B, in a sense, create like a side hustle, maybe not full time, but just something supplemental in case the world goes down. I have something to give back and trade. So that was like the two major things was just to learn something I don't need a lot of technology,
Hmm.
basically. And that's sort of an old world trade, if that makes sense.
100%. That's why I started Dale's Leatherworks. There's a point there where it was looking like I was going to have to go buy a compound somewhere, and
Yeah.
or not a compound, but a plot of land and live off of it there for a little bit. Because let's just say there were certain things I wasn't going to go along with, and
Hmm.
I'm very petulant. When somebody tells me I have to do something, I'm
Hmm.
kind of like a an adolescent child. I don't like to listen.
Hmm.
And when somebody tells me that I absolutely have to do something, but it's just I can't control it. I just can't go along with it, you know? So yeah, it was absolutely, I was hearing a lot about potential famines coming, and same thing. I wanted to develop an old world trade that could be valuable if the grid went down,
Hmm.
hit the fan. There's no time like the present. If you're interested in something, just start. Like, just get started. We like to think in such apocalyptic terms, like if the world ended or you know, everything upended, but it's like, okay, but once again, talking about pragmatism, let's bring it back to the present. Let's bring it back to what we know and what we can do. Can you buy a side of leather and start cutting it and start hammering holes into it and start stitching it and make it into something and try it? And you might be able to make some pretty cool stuff, some pretty rudimentary implements. The first thing that I ever made was a sheath for my lighters. And
Hmm.
it's just a flap of leather, and I just folded it and shaped it around the lighter and then punched holes and closed it up with, hand stitched, and I
Hmm.
still have it. It's very gratifying to be able to make your own stuff. You look at things differently when you actually
Hmm.
make something with your hands. You kind of like studying language, you can understand the world better if you can create something from scratch. And so
Hmm.
I think we all have it in us. We do it with food. We make our own foods. Some of us do anyway. Not to mention being religious, I believe we have these hands to make stuff with them. So that's another good reason. But yeah, same thing. Like I wanted to just have something to offer the world post-apocalypse sort of thing.
Yeah.
Next set of boots that are still in the box, Viberg. I repurchased these in my correct size, color 8, Chrome Excel. Look at those bad boys with the original black tongue.
Nice.
Um, I wanted to rebuy these after I moved them on because, for me, it was my first two pairs of Vibergs was this and the brown Chrome Excel. And so I repurchased both of those because Viberg currently only offers plain toe for some reason in this. And what is it? The Shop Vancouver or some Canadian shop sells these still. And I just I offloaded both my Vibergs and I replaced them with
Mhm.
size 8s because it is UK sizing, and still fresh out of the box, brand new, beautiful. So haven't
Nice.
worn these yet. All right, next conspiracy.
I guess it's kind of an open topic, but like, what
Yeah.
is your theory is down in Antarctica?
Ooh, good question. I love Antarctica. I love talking about that place. So the flat earthers say that Antarctica is the key to the flat earth. I don't think that. Oh, I think so they say nobody can go there. That's partially true. There's scientists there. They're doing all kinds of study down there. One of my favorite stories about Antarctica is Lieutenant Colonel Byrd took an expedition down there after World War II or at the tail end, and he encountered what he said were advanced German aircraft that totally kicked his fleet's ass. And so on his way back from Antarctica, he stopped in Argentina and gave an interview. And upon his arrival back to the United States, he was committed to an insane asylum and then jumped out of his window and killed himself, uh, sort of thing. They were Epsteining people way before, uh,
Hmm.
way back then, and so there is a strong hypothesis. Again, I've never been to Antarctica, that there was a faction of Nazis that did develop. I'm sure you've heard of the bell-shaped UFO craft that the Nazis were developing. There's a theory that a faction of Nazis had developed this advanced aerial craft using help from the ancient ones. I'll let you draw your conclusions on who that is. Possibly the ones that are already in the that you saw years ago
Hmm.
in the sky, and that the Nazis were not necessarily defeated, but they relocated to Antarctica with this advanced technology, and that there is potentially Nazis still living there, potentially with some of these ancient advanced humans. Now, again, another caveat, I don't know any of this to be true. This is just when you look into Admiral Byrd's theory, that's BYRD, or the story around him,
Hmm.
it's very interesting. I think it is possible that there is what Richard Dolan would call a breakaway civilization living in Alaska, but it's not just confined to Alaska. It could be deep under the oceans, the Marianas Trench, I think it's called.
Hmm.
We see a lot of UAP activity around the Marianas Trench, and it's because, well, if you were a civilization trying to hide from the world, would you not go to remote areas if you had the
Hmm.
technology to,
Hmm.
deep under the ocean, deep underground, and or deep in Antarctica? It would make sense that part of the reason why they don't want people there is because they might start seeing things that they're not supposed to see, because it would totally upend history. It would upend a lot of stuff. We like thinking that, yeah, the Nazis were just defeated in World War II, and that was the end of that. It's like, okay, well, we know that large segments of them moved into Argentina, South
Hmm.
America.
Yep.
There's still German towns there to this day you could go. They don't speak Spanish, they speak German. Um,
Hmm.
these are the descendants of, the Nazis that left Germany in World War II. And so, once again, going back to pragmatics, right? If it's so outlandish to think that Nazis escaped, then, well, here's a case in Argentina of them just living there comfortably right now.
Hmm.
Um, so who's to say that they didn't develop some sort of advanced technology and are in Antarctica? But there's a lot with Antarctica. It is wrought with hypotheses. What are your thoughts on it?
Very close to what you were saying. I'm also thinking that there's probably caverns, caves, there's hollow earth, and
Hmm.
there's probably a lot of resources that were there before the ice caved over. So there's
Hmm.
probably a lot of maybe oil. Um, there's a lot of countries that won't even touch it, and they're so it's like, interesting. Why can't we share the resources that they have?
Yeah,
So it's very interesting. And going into the Hollow Earth part, it's probably like an entrance to other parts, to like maybe even all the way into the United States. I'm wondering if there's like just highways of them just going in and out through oceans, through continents without anybody knowing.
true.
So yeah.
Anything's possible. And again, if you think this is
Hmm.
crazy, let's pump the brakes and let's look at what we already have underground, right? We have
Hmm.
Elon Musk's boring company.
Hmm.
What's he doing? Tunneling underground, creating tunnel
Hmm.
networks underground, right? This is public. There's the ancient Turkish city, I think, called Derinkuyu. If I'm not mistaken, it's this entire city that's underground and it's ancient. They dug deep and it's huge. It's literally a city. It's underground. You could tour it to this day. Rooms, chambers, common areas, ways in and out, right? If ancient peoples were doing this, this is not crazy, right?
Hmm.
This is real. Not to mention, I'm an amateur, what do you call, spelunker myself. I like to find local caves. And to give you some insight into the cave community, you can't just Google, oh, where's a good cave? Like you'll you'll go to like caves that you could tour, but there are other caves. I'm aware of a couple within this area. There's one in Shippensburg, Pennsylvania. There's one. It's called Whiting's Neck in West Virginia. The entrance is on private property. They don't advertise it. You can't Google the location. I know where to find it, but basically, it's just this little opening. You probably walk past it without seeing it, but it's this massive cave structure. Once you get in there, you enter a main chamber, and then there's this little tunnel that you have to crawl through. It takes you to this vast network of caverns, right?
Hmm.
Now, if I was an ancient person, I would love to know that because what's a cave? It's consistently the same temperature year round, regardless of the outside air. It's always 55 degrees. So imagine this: you're a Native American living in West Virginia 500 years ago, and you could either try to stay warm in a tent or a teepee, or you have this cave. It's 55 degrees year round. Where would you rather be? I'd rather be in that cave.
Mhm.
Predators aren't going in there. It's consistently 55 degrees. Guess what? On a scorching hot day, 110 degrees outside, I could retreat into the cave, cool off. So you're cooling off in the summer, you're warming up in the winter. Heck, if I found a cave like that, I'd probably want to expand it, build some more tunnels, chisel
Mhm.
out some new rooms to let other people come in. This stuff isn't, it's not insane to think about, building an
Mhm.
underground tunnel system and or living quarters. This
Mhm.
has been going on for a long time.
I mean, Zuckerberg's
But
making a bunker, you
yeah,
know,
yeah,
so
exactly.
things like that. So,
Yeah,
and
people
then
make
there's
bunkers.
in Colorado, there's like several miles deep, like a whole like military base underneath. So I'm like, okay, there's stuff down there. So,
Yeah, yeah. It's not hard. We've been doing it, so there's obviously yeah, there's going to be sites we're not allowed to know about.
mhm.
Then there's many public underground places you can go and you could tour. And there's entire complexes built inside mountains. And even on my drive back to Ohio, back home to Ohio here from Maryland, I passed through several tunnels that go through mountains. People have
Mhm.
been tunneling forever.
Mhm.
And so this isn't just because you haven't seen it doesn't mean it's not there, right? So again, I'm trying to keep it real here because I don't believe
Yeah,
conspiracy theory I hear. For example, I don't the Mars Marine program. Have you heard this one?
kind of, but refresh me.
Okay, so there's several individuals. They mainly show up on Gaia TV.
Mm.
They claim that they were recruited at the age of 10. They are trained to become a Marine, but they're sort of intergalactic Marines. They get sent to Mars and they fight like these reptiloid slash insectoid beings there, right? It's very much something obviously inspired from a video game.
Mhm.
But these guys, they're out there touting this stuff, and then they say that once they hit their 20 years, they get transported back into their 10-year-old body. And so they back in time. And so they go and they fight
Hmm.
all these wars with the Martian Marines. And then at the end of their term, they're then transported back into their 10-year-old body and they start having these memories later in life that, oh yeah, I used to fight insectoids on Mars. And now the memories are just coming back, but it's totally real. Like, I don't buy that at all. It's a fun story. I'm not going to say
Mhm.
it's not fun, but I just don't believe it. You know what I mean? So with all this information, you have to take it in, entertain it, think about it. Um, you don't have to make a snap judgment on this stuff, but it's important, I think, to there's one channel right now. He's got the heckle fish off in the corner.
Oh yeah, yeah.
The Y Files.
Wi-Fi, yeah.
Yes, yes. AJ at the Y Files. He does a good job taking these really wild theories, and he will tell you either he believes it or he doesn't know, which I think is important to say. Sometimes I don't know,
Mhm.
or completely debunk it altogether. One of the ones that he totally debunked, and I'm happy he debunked it, was the moon landing hoax theory, which was that obviously it was one of the first conspiracy theories that most of us were exposed to, which was that the moon landing was hoaxed, right? I don't know where you're at on that, but I wanted it. I want the moon landing to be real. And he did a video on it and he debunked all the moon landing hoax evidence. And so I'm happy that we're back on the moon landing as a thing because one of the key pieces of evidence was Stanley Kubrick, who was a movie director back in the day. There's footage of him explaining how they set the scene up for the moon landing in somewhere in like Arizona or something like that. And they just created the stage there and they filmed it live and they broadcasted it live, but it was actually like all in Arizona. But the problem was the guy in the interview was not Stanley Kubrick. He was a
Hmm.
guy that didn't even look like Stanley Kubrick, but they just say, "Hey, this is Stanley Kubrick, movie director. Look, he's admitting to this. Moon landing was fake." Now we could all run with that idea. It's like, no, that was like the
Hmm.
fundamental crux that the argument sort of rested on. The other one was all these lighting angles that they say don't make sense, but I'm looking at my room, there's shadows everywhere. They're not going in the same direction. Or how did the American flag, why is the American flag standing like sort of erect, I guess? But you see the pole above the flag that's holding the flag in place. And so, to me, I'm glad that one got debunked. But yeah, he covers a lot of stuff.
What's his stance on like who filmed everything? They just put it on a tripod and then and there's shots of it zooming and following the ship. Like was there technology where they could remotely just do that?
Good question. I think he did cover it in the video. Yeah, I think he basically said that there were multiple cameras going, and so there was more footage collected than was broadcast live. That's why we have other angles now. But I'd have to go rewatch the video.
Hmm.
He basically accounted for every argument that the naysayers pose. I'm back convinced that to being convinced that we did land on the moon personally. Again, I know that's a hot topic, but that might disappoint a lot of people. Sorry if I'm coming off as a sheep right now, but and again, I wasn't on the moon when it happened, so
Hmm.
I really don't know. But that's just where I'm at with it. Have you ever heard of he covered my favorite story. Have you ever heard of Project Serpo?
No, what's that one?
Project Serpo was a an alleged program during I think the 1960s where they recruited I think 16 not astronauts but military personnel. So basically, after Area 51 happened, one of the aliens survived from the crash, and he was able to get the communication system from the crashed craft back up and running. And he organized basically an interplanetary exchange program with his fellow aliens back home. So he arranged, I think, 5 or 10 years from that point of communication for a pickup. They were going to come pick him up, which I think he died 2 years after the message was sent. But nonetheless, an agreement was made between us and the extraterrestrials. They would leave, I think, 3 of their scientists here on Earth to help our scientists here, and we would send 16 troops with them to go live on planet Serpo. And they were going to stay there for about, I think, 5 or 10 years and then come back. So as the story goes, these were doctors, but they were mostly soldiers, like sign, and none of them had family here, so nobody would notice they were gone, sort of a thing. And they sent them off to planet Serpo. I think like one guy, it was like a 9 month trip on their ship. One guy died on the way. They got there. A lot happened there. They lived among the locals there. It was apparently very, very hot on planet Serpo. Three of them, 3 of the Marines, I think, decided to stay. They migrated to the north part of the planet where it was cooler, more like Colorado here, and they actually liked it so much that they didn't want to come back. So some of them died due to various reasons, but ultimately, yeah, I think most of them did come back 8 years later. They were given new names, permanent pensions for the rest of their life. Keep your mouth shut about this. They handed over a ton of photographic evidence to the government, but that was my favorite story there for a while. But it turned out it was a hoax. It was perpetrated by one of the known disinformation experts, Richard Doty, I think. He's an older guy, but basically he wrote the whole story and put it up on an anonymous forum, claimed to be a whistleblower, but then some internet sleuths tracked the IP address to Richard Doty, who was a known disinformation
Hmm.
expert. And it's a cool story nonetheless, but I don't believe it happened. You could YouTube it. There's plenty of channels that have covered Project Serpo, and in
Okay.
fact, the Last Encounters of the Third Kind, directed by Steven Spielberg, the end of that movie where it shows those astronauts getting on,
Hmm.
meeting with the little humanoids and getting onto their ship.
Hmm.
It was alleged that Steven Spielberg was given some insider information about that project and that he was going to soft leak it to the public in this movie. And so that's what he did. So at the end of Close Encounters of the Third Kind. That's what he was allegedly cluing us all in on, was this Project Serpo program where the astronauts were going to go and they were going to live there. And I just don't buy that one anymore. I used to think it was fun to play around with it in my head, like, oh, that's so cool. Did this really happen? Oh man,
Mhm.
imagine if that really happened. It's fun, right? It's pragmatically, I just don't think it happened because it just doesn't pass the smell test. That's my favorite. What's your favorite outlandish conspiracy theory?
Did you want to talk about chemtrails?
Oh yeah, yeah. That's one that I just don't know enough about.
Mhm.
I found a lady recently that was talking about it, and she was discussing what was in the chemtrails specifically. There was some type of heavy metal
Mhm.
predominantly that are found in these, but she was like cornering different state employed pilots that were running these chemtrails. They didn't know what was even in their payload. They're told where to fly and when to spray, and that's just what they do. I don't know. I honestly I don't know a lot. What are your thoughts on it?
I think sorry. I think it could be different depending on what their project is or what their missions are, but they could be anything from manipulating the weather to mosquitoes, Bill Gates, to pesticides, to like with the weather, creating clouds, things like that, manipulating the weather in that sense. Um, but yeah, it's who knows what they can put in it. It's a way
Concerning.
to, yeah, go ahead.
It's concerning
Yeah.
if they're not telling us what we're breathing in.
Hmm.
Absolutely. Being a health nut myself, I absolutely do not consent to
Hmm.
my air being contaminated with whatever they're doing. Once again, let's step back into the world of pragmatism, right? Cloud seeding is not a conspiracy theory. This was a an operation and a technology established sometime after World War II. I think it was called Operation Cirrus, or regardless, they were able to seed clouds with a certain chemical to cause rain. And so they're absolutely able to manipulate the weather.
I think China is doing it a lot to help grow crops and clean the air.
Cloud seeding is a weather modification technique that uses particles to increase precipitation. The goal is to create more rain or snow or smaller hail. So it incorporates silver iodide, which is a common seeding agent that helps form ice crystals. Silver iodide is naturally present in the environment and is not known to be harmful to humans or wildlife. But yeah, most people don't know about that. But yeah, Operation Popeye was this Air Force operation that used cloud seeding to extend the monsoon season during the Vietnam War. The goal was to disrupt the North Vietnamese military supplies and operations. So, yeah, Project Popeye. So that's not a conspiracy theory. Anybody look it up. Like, I don't know what else they're doing. I don't know, but weather manipulation has been a thing for decades. And now that we have satellites, I just don't know. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know what their intentions are. But I do know one thing for a fact is that space laser absolutely started the wildfires in Maui. I saw the screen clip of it. It was like just this big red beam coming from outer
Energy
space.
weapon.
Yes,
Yeah.
directed energy weapon.
But Oprah's house is fine. Just
All the celebrities' houses had those
Mhm.
blue roofs, and they were totally spared. That stuff is very interesting. I don't know what could be going on. It comes down to a matter of public trust. Do you trust these institutions? I don't know. Being a Christian, I'm definitely more, not to use the flat earth term, realm, but I do believe that God programmed us to operate within this realm, right? Within this atmosphere, with these people that we meet and talk to, the food that grows out of the ground, the animals that wander the earth, we're able to eat them. I believe, our mental faculties, our emotions, they were all programmed in us just perfectly. We're all set here just perfectly to be able to exist here on this planet in this way. And the more we sort of try to use our science and let me say this, all of our creations could be used for good or bad. Our technology right now, I think it's an amazing place with social media. I can link up with people like you, have amazing discussions. The more science progresses, the more we're able to find like cool health hacks, that weren't available or widely known. But a lot of that stuff ties back to ancient things. Like I'm big into the mushrooms. I'm big into chaga mushroom, reishi mushroom. These are things that people have been consuming for thousands of years, and they're finding all these amazing health benefits that they have. Now, can we use science to sort of isolate some of these chemicals and compounds to put them in a pill form and take them and live better lives? Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a way that we can navigate this existence properly within the context that we were created for. But yeah, sometimes I think, you have psychopaths that get into positions of power and they abuse it and manipulate it. And that's why, yeah, the chemtrail thing. Once again, I don't know. I'm not a chemtrail pilot or scientist. Don't work on these programs. Yeah, they might be operating under the assumption that they're doing good. I don't know. I can't attribute to them good or bad intentions. I just it is something to look into, and I think as a public we should be allowed to know what they're up to at least. But
I
yeah.
think it was either Cat Williams or someone in the comedy space. He was saying that he saw, oh wait, it was Prince, I think. But
Hmm.
he was saying that he saw chemtrails in his neighborhood, and within that week, people were fighting. There was a lot of aggression in that neighborhood. And
Hmm.
I was like, interesting. I wonder if there's some chemical agents that they were testing and wanted to see what would happen, possibly.
Could very well be the case. There's other things I think that can lead people to be very aggressive. I think our standard American diet is
Mhm.
absolutely a culprit. I remember as a kid, I was always drinking Coca-Cola. I always had a 24 pack of Coca-Cola in my room. And there were just times where I was just like find myself in a fit of rage for no good reason. And I blame a lot of the food. I grew up sick, eating McDonald's, eating the standard American diet. There's a reason it's abbreviated SAD, right? SAD. It's sad.
Mhm.
It's terrible.
Mhm.
And for anybody that wants to, poke fun at us for questioning the institutions, it's like,
Mhm.
yeah, the FDA gave us the food pyramid. Never forget that. They said that we're supposed to eat predominantly wheat.
Mhm.
Like I'm not against bread, by the way. I think bread is a miraculous food. It's a biblical food. I think it is miraculous the way that we combine yeast and it expands. And I think healthy bread is absolutely
Mhm.
miraculous. There is nothing like the smell of freshly baking bread. It's the white Wonder Bread that's absolutely the devil. It smells bad. It's
If it takes too long to mold,
yeah,
something's up.
yes, yeah. Fresh bread out of the oven, a fresh, tandoori naan, or a fresh
Mhm.
sourdough, or a fresh
Mhm.
whole grain, or whatever. Like when you smell it, you smell the miracle that bread is. I don't think carbs are the enemy when it comes to diet. We all have, there's 8 billion people on the planet, so there's 8 billion diets. Um, I think there's a lot of wisdom we can get from diets like paleo, from keto, vegetarianism. I think there's wisdom in all those diets. I think it's just excess in any one direction can be deleterious. So, for example, I feel sick if I don't have a decent amount of carbs during the day. I'm not talking 5 cups of rice, I'm talking 1 cup of rice. I'm talking 2 slices of fresh sourdough.
Mhm.
I'm not talking about eating an entire pizza, right?
Yeah.
So I feel sick if I don't have carbs. And whenever I've been on carbs, it's not just the demoralization of not having bread in my life, but it's also the reduced energy because when it comes to nutrition, carbohydrates are unmatched when it comes to that explosive energy that you have. Fat can never give you that energy. No matter how much you pretend, it will never give you the energy carbs will give you. I think carbs are absolutely crucial. But that said, I think the modern look at fat, like, oh, we need healthy fat, oh, we need all this avocado, fat still makes you fat. And in fact, fat per gram is 9 calories. A carb per gram is only 4 calories. Protein per gram is only 4 calories. So if anything, yes, do we need some healthy fat? Yeah, very little. but I would say focus on lean proteins first, then carbs, fat last, in my opinion. That said, everybody's body works differently, but that's just for me. I believe I've come to this conclusion that bread is a miraculous food, and I do not think we should be throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Yeah, Wonder Bread is absolutely an abomination. Never eat that shit again. But
Especially things that are processed. Like I would hear friends that go to like other countries for like several weeks, lose a ton of weight,
mhm,
and then the diet's definitely different in other countries, and then come back to the United States, gain it all back. And it's
mhm.
just there's something in our food, how it's processed,
Yeah,
and yeah, there's like the
absolutely.
cereals and things like that. It's just too much sugar, process,
Yes,
colors and dyes, cancerous materials that we don't know about.
right. Yeah, that's why I'm really excited about this Maha thing because I've been following RFK Jr. on the dark web for years. Like most people only learned his name just recently, but I've been following that guy for over 4 years. I'm not on board, with everything he says, obviously, but like, yeah, the red dyes that has to come out. In fact, my wife she orders our kids cereal from Italy because Italy doesn't
Wow.
have any of that shit.
Mm,
None of the dyes, none of the synthetics into their cereal. And
mm.
so all of our cereals are like from Italy.
So is your wife as into this kind of stuff as well, or just the food mostly? Or
Yeah, she's pretty into it, I would say. She doesn't care much for chemtrails. The UAP thing, she'll listen to me talk about it, but
Mhm,
she's not like actively always on it. But when it comes to like the health of our kids, she takes that very seriously. So
mhm,
she's always trying to find alternatives to the standard American options
mhm,
for our kids. Because yeah, I'm the same way. I am like I'm not a super strict with my kids. Like if they want candy, I let them have it. If they want French fries, I let them have it. Because I don't want them to have this sort of stigma, fetishize junk food,
mhm,
so that when they're
mhm.
adults, that's all they want to eat. I'd rather
Yeah.
be very flexible with them,
Mhm,
make sure they're getting the healthy stuff. But if they want to have the occasional Dairy Queen, I don't say no because I do not want them having this warped worldview when it comes to food and say, "Oh, Little Debbie's. Oh, my dad never let me have those, so now I'm going to eat them." And
mhm,
because when you're a child, you could get away with a lot. You can make a lot of mistakes as a child because your body still has all those stem cells. Your immune system is super vivacious, and frankly, kids need more sugar. Kids do need carbs way more than adults do because they're growing. Adults really need to tighten down because the more we're into our older years, we're really drifting off into the cosmos, and we really have to rely on nutrition much more and tighten it up because otherwise that could lead to all sorts of deleterious health effects. Obviously, I mean, just look at it out there.
yeah.
Adults really need to stay in control. It's absolutely uh paramount. But kids, they could get away with a lot of stuff. And that's why I'm not as strict. I'll cringe when I see them eating like junk, but I let it happen because I know that, you know, the conversation for a healthy diet is going to come later, and I don't want them feeling like they missed out on a childhood because I'm absolutely insane with my diet.
I think also setting an example, they're like, well, dad's doing it this way and he looks healthy, he's not getting sick a lot. I think it kind of rubs off on children, so
Yeah, they'll see the way I lived, and they'll use that as an example, and that's what I hope, that you don't have to do what I say, but I'd like you to do what I do later and let that serve as the foundation. But yeah, being strict, I know how I operate in a strict environment. It doesn't go well for the tyrants. I'll tell you that. Never did. How about you, like with diet? Have you tried any of the latest things? Have you tried the methylene blue yet?
I looked it up. I'm just kind of scared. It's like you're putting, I don't know, it's coloring, and I'm just like, I don't know.
Yeah,
Maybe if I a little bit more down the line, I might try it, but
yeah,
that's came out of nowhere.
yeah.
I think a lot of these new discoveries are like psyops. Like I need more testing and proof before, jumping into anything. Um, I did get into like the nicotine stuff you were recommending, and
Oh
my
yeah.
husband's been taking that.
Oh
He's like, I don't
cool.
want to get COVID. I was like, okay, bye. Get your daily nicotine in.
Yes, yes. I'm happy to hear that. I love it. I absolutely love it. I love the lozenges.
Mhm.
I just popped one just now. But yeah, the methylene blue, it's basically a sodium and it's
Mm,
an antioxidant, but also what it is, it's thought that it can draw radiation out. So people will drink
mm,
it after a flight, for example.
okay.
Uh, but actually, I was just on a plane and I was looking at the radiation and it was lower there. It was like 48,
Hmm.
whereas just right here in this room, I have a radiation detector, EMF detector. So like right
Mm,
now, so on the plane it was 48. Here right now it's 49, 50.
mm.
Closer it gets to the computer, it'll go up, I think. Maybe not. Yeah, right here it's 50. So in my kitchen it was like 55, but
Hmm.
point being like on the plane there wasn't actually that much radiation. But the other thing that methylene blue does, it helps something with blood cell conversion. It helps
Mm.
to oxygenate your body better
Okay.
through the blood. One thing that I notice is when I drink it, like this is going to be TMI, so warning, my pee is blue. It comes out blue. Not kind of blue, not green, it's blue. So,
Hmm.
and then there was an autopsy done on a guy who they gave it to him intravenously
Mm.
and they took his brain. His brain was blue as well. So
Hmm.
just keep that in mind. You're going to dye yourself blue if
Hmm.
you drink too much of it.
Right. Do you think did he die from it or?
No, they were using methylene blue to treat him, I think for some sort of a condition that he was dying from, and it helped
Mm.
him, but ultimately the disease won out. But I'd have to look into it again. But yeah, so far I like it. Like I've been drinking it like every 3 days. I'll just have a glass. I'll just do like 10 drops and drink it down. I'm sure it does other things, but it's not something to do every day all the time.
Do you feel any effects from it
Uh,
besides the pee?
yeah, I do. Actually, when I drink it, and I'll have like my vodka or something afterwards, I don't feel the alcohol as much.
Hmm.
The effects of the alcohol are greatly diminished.
Hmm.
So I don't know what's going on there. I don't know why that would be. Maybe my body's processing because of the more oxygen, maybe it's
Hmm.
processing the alcohol out quicker. So
Hmm.
maybe it could help with hangovers. Maybe if you're a light drinker, you've had a little too much, drink some of that. That might help you out, recover quicker. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I'm not one of those trusted, super trustworthy doctors. Yeah, that's about all. And I think mentally it makes me a little sharper. But I'm on stimulants all the time as it is. I'm on amino lean, 200 milligrams of caffeine here, 5 calories. Thank you. I got my nicotine up there, so I'm always on something to help with,
Mhm.
optimize my brain
Mhm.
performance. But speaking of brain performance, if you really want to have a smart brain, check out these Junkers in green shell quartering that I haven't worn. Very pretty. I'll probably never
Nice.
wear these. They're just too immaculate. Oh, these are cool. Truman's in waxy gray. I forget what they called it, but this is a mohawk, and I haven't worn these yet. Black rawhide laces,
Mhm.
killers. Still haven't taken those out. Let's see. Let me get through these real quick.
Oh, I like
Naran,
those.
yeah, Naranja, horse rump, Truman's, same tannery as the purple ones and the naturals.
Mhm.
Still haven't taken these out for a ride, but these I eventually want to wear.
Mhm.
Orange is such a fun color. I just have too many boots here. So these were sent to me by one of my friends to review. I actually don't even know who made them because the box is not branded, but this is a black service boot. Oh, these are Kiatokos. Kiatoko with a cat's paw heel
Nice.
and cat's paw heel. Wow, awesome. Can't wait to review these things. These are sick. These I'm excited about. Iron boots, brown shell cordovan.
Mhm. Isn't that the collab one that you were
Yes,
doing? Okay.
yes. Olive, Dr. Soul.
Sometimes the soles are just too pretty to wear it. You know what I'm saying?
Like, how are we gonna walk on that? Come on, people.
Right.
You can't beat these up by walking on them. Heck no. So yeah, my Grigios are utterly destroyed. There's still another month in the Thunderdome, so I'll see
How
how
are
much.
those going?
What's that?
How are those going? Do you have
Oh,
a
good. I could
picture?
grab them. I have them right here, actually. Let me grab it. That's how it's going.
I like it.
Yeah, unreal.
So is that like a waxed or a dye? Or
Yeah, this is a TPR thermoplastic resin,
hmm,
which is how they're able to achieve such a gray appearance.
hmm,
But as it wears off, it reveals the natural
hmm,
undertones. And so there's no way to get it back on.
hmm.
Once it's off, sort of
Right.
thing. So yeah, this side's pretty gnarly too.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's many a 20,000 step walk were done in these. So
How many do you think have you logged the miles on that?
oh yeah, yeah. Through the snow. Part of the reason why they're so scratched up is there's a little route I take through the woods where there's like a lot of like downed logs and stuff. And
Mhm.
you can't really see it at dark when it's icy out. And so they just got beat to crap. So excited
Nice.
to see how they'll turn out. They also have my black marbled shell cordovan kilties in there. These I'm excited about. I just got these in Caswell in Asphalto Horse Rump, Mariam. And these are the lace to toes. These are the ones Kevin, I believe, made through one of the Indonesian makers. He told me once, but I forget exactly who did them. It might be Fortis or it might be somebody else. I forget. But the Indonesians do such good work. And Asphalto right there. Ass kickers. So you've done a lot of runs through Fortis, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so how's that going? You probably have the most Fortis of anybody.
Yeah. But I'm at that point where I'm just like, because I want to go the flat route with
Yeah.
the sole, it's like I have to pretty much get rid of them or deconstruct them and resole them. So that's where I'm standing. Like there's rough outs and like some shell cordovans that I really like to keep, but I'm gonna have to end up resoling them
Yeah.
some way. It's gonna take forever, but I'd like to just get rid of most of them and then just kind of use the last that I have and just make brand new shoes out of them. Thinking of maybe Chelsea's or some zip ups or maybe even just like slip-ons. Or
Okay.
I'd like to do like a Wellington type boot. I got some shell and some bison that I want to try to make boots out of, but we'll see.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, the sole construction, that's one that mystifies me. I've seen so many videos of how they do it, but still, like if I'm gonna do
Hmm.
this by hand, I have to just figure out a way because
Hmm.
if I'm gonna resole, I'm gonna be so out of my depths. I mean, there's so many steps, with the
Hmm.
cork and the shank, and I have to question the methods that were already preceded
Hmm.
me and maybe try to do it on my own, figure out my own way to just make it work with leather stacks. How that's going to work out, I don't know. But I want to do it all by hand and I wanted to be able to resole by hand. That way I can,
Hmm.
not gum up the welt, basically. I want to be able to run that needle through by hand.
Hmm.
I just don't know how it's going to go.
All right.
So we'll see. But yeah, okay, so back to Inner Earth. Okay. I guess lately I've come across this realization that maybe the answers I'm looking for aren't always found on like these channels on YouTube because I watch a lot of these creators and they sort of get high on the creative process and they sort of abandon the research process.
Mhm.
And that's why I've sort of lately started to take a step back from the streaming in terms of like discovering the hidden meaning of things. Because I don't know if you caught the recent Wes Huff, uh,
Hmm.
Billy Carson debacle,
Yeah.
but I had been listening to Billy Carson for years. He's brilliant, very entertaining guy to listen to,
Hmm.
fascinating. But Wes Huff is actually he's a biblical scholar and
Hmm.
he's a linguist and he understands ancient Greek, ancient Hebrew, some Aramaic. He understands some of these old languages. And Billy Carson was basically saying, "Oh, in the Sinai Bible, it doesn't describe Jesus as being crucified." And Billy just said, "Are you referring to the Codex Sinaiticus?"
Hmm.
Billy says, "Oh yeah," and he said, "Yeah. So on this website, you could just pull up Codex Sinaiticus, and it says right here he was crucified, right?" And so
Hmm.
that's why I think being intimately knowledgeable on the ancient word
Hmm.
is crucial.
Yeah.
And so that's why I've decided to step back so much from these modern sensationalist sort of
Hmm.
channels because they do have a lot of really interesting information, but some of it is just, I hate to admit, but some of it does just come down to people just trying to sell a book or trying
Hmm.
to be sensational for the sake of it, taking that pragmatic approach, getting back into the words that were written. I want to be able to
Hmm.
read some of this old Greek. They just uncovered in Beit Saida, I think it's called, which means the fisherman's house in Hebrew. Bethsaida. Anyways, they found this old mural on the floor, is written in Greek, and it was basically, I think, attributed to the apostle Peter. And like now being familiarized with Greek script, I could actually read it and find where the name Peter, Patros, written there. And see, to me, that's important. If I'm gonna be out there making claims, I want to be grounded in text.
Hmm.
So that's why I feel like, not looking so much to modern outlets, but ancient ones, and being
Hmm.
able to actually look at the source and read it and translate it from the
Right.
source. I feel like that's majority of your knowledge base could be derived from. You could make so many discoveries that way, and it's
Hmm.
so empowering to be able to look at Greek and read it,
Right.
Hebrew and read that. I just bought a Greek uh, book, and it basically I'm reading through it how to understand biblical Greek, and there's 120 words that account for 70% of the Gospels. And so if you memorize these 120 words, you can
Hmm.
understand 70% of the Gospels. The rest you can fill in with a dictionary, right? So
Nice.
yeah, so that's why I'm trying to go back to the roots because when you go back to the roots,
Hmm.
it lays the foundation for everything else. Because yeah,
Hmm.
it's easy to just turn on a podcast with Billy Carson and hear him talking. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh Atlantis, yeah, cool. Oh yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
Sinai Bible, yeah, cool. And just take it, not. And the thing about it was that was such a simple mistake that he made, but he was making this claim for years
Hmm.
off of no, and the basis for it was non-existent. It's
Hmm.
and nobody went back to the Codex Sinaiticus and actually read
Hmm.
it.
Hmm.
It took Wes Huff
Yeah.
in an interview just, hey, yeah, by the way, no, it's written there if you just go look at it.
Wasn't he also basing like a lot of the Bible to be incorrect and things like that as well?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Billy Carson, he's made a lot of claims, and I'm not saying that they're all wrong. When you're operating off of an argument that's fundamentally flawed and so easily corrected, and then you're just repeating this narrative for years, and once again, none of the people listening are opening the book, and that's why I really just feel like I just need to get
Yeah.
back into books. Like, just there's so much wisdom in books, and we just don't. I hate reading, but I'm gonna force myself to. So that's kind of where I'm at with it all. I feel like there's a lot of mysteries waiting to be uncovered if you just read the original text in the original language. Like I said, I'm not trying to be fluent,
Hmm.
but I feel like having a foundation in these languages can really help. Fun fact, the Greek word for strawberry is faraula. I said, where did I hear that before? That's the Arabic word for strawberry as well, faraula. Greek and Arabic share
Hmm.
a similar word. To say good afternoon in Greek, it's kalispera. I thought about that for a while. Kali is good, spera afternoon. What does that sound like? That sounds like buona sera in Italian.
Mm.
Sera, spera, both mean afternoon. So their point being is Greek kind of closes the gap with a lot of the Romance languages,
Mm.
and it also starts getting us into the other region. So I feel like Greek is it should be taught in public schools. It really should.
Mhm.
It's really one of those, I think, really important languages to know, especially if you're into the Bible
Mhm.
and things like that. Being able to understand some Greek and read it, it's absolutely very important. So yeah, I'm once again baby Christian here.
I think that's really awesome because there's the sayings that like reading the word of God, he's talking to you, he's filling you with his spirit, his essence, and like the closer you get to God, the closer you can like he'll give you gifts and blessings and the insights, like the connections that you've been putting together. It's like, here you go.
Yeah,
So
here
I
it
think
is.
that's really awesome that you're doing that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's absolutely fascinating. Like I said, you don't need to go dig in Israel for
Mhm.
some ancient burial ground to find answers. The answers are written in the words, and if you know the words and if you can digest enough words,
Yeah.
you can start making comparisons like no other. And I think that's really where it's at. And I don't know where I'm going to find the time to really master this stuff, but it's so much fun. Like truly, language holds so many mysteries. It really does. Have you studied other languages yourself?
I think back in elementary school I took like Japanese, but it's all gone now. And then
Okay.
high school I took some Spanish, but that doesn't hang on either. So I'm
Yeah.
just kind of like I need to get like an app or something to quickly just grasp it, and then maybe I can find something to take off on, like Spanish or things like that.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so you've studied Vulgar Latin then. That's good.
Yeah.
I also speak a version of Vulgar Latin. It's
Mm.
I refer to it as heterosexual French, otherwise known as Italian. Italian's a lot of fun too, and studying the different Romance languages. There's six national languages of Spain. Did you know this?
No.
Yeah, and if you know Spanish, you can understand most all of them. There's Aragonese, there's Catalan, which you might have heard of, what they call Gallego in their language, but it's Galician. It's actually, if you thought Portuguese and Spanish were basically the same language, Galician
Mm.
is right in the middle
Mm.
of those two. It's spoken in Galicia, that I think borders Portugal. Whenever I look at any of these languages, it's like, wow, these are just basically dialects of Spanish. The people of the region refer to them as languages, but along the dialectical continuum, to me, they're 95% mutually intelligible with Spanish. The only one that's the outlier is, of course, Basque, what they call Euskara, which Basque, there you go, there's another ancient conspiracy. Nobody knows where the Basque people are from. The closest I think they were able to trace their DNA lineage to was somewhere in Ireland or something like that. But the Basque language is not a Romance language. It is out of place in Spain. It basically should not be there. This Basque community, I don't even think it's considered an Indo-Europe. It would have to be actually, but it's an outlier. It doesn't belong where it is, and it's been there for thousands of years. And the theory that I sort of ascribe to is these were a displaced people, probably from the flood era, that made their way into Spain and settled there and just stayed. It's utterly fascinating, though. When you want to talk about lost civilizations and things. Guess what? There's one living in Spain right now.
Mhm.
Nobody solved the Basque problem yet. Nobody really knows where they're from. So there you go. It's conspiracies are not so outlandish when you just look at modern examples. Yeah, language really is at the heart of my passion, along with leather. I think the reason that I feel such a strong bond to leather is because it is an ancient product,
Mhm.
and just like languages are ancient, so is leather work. And I feel that by working with my hands and making things out of leather, that I'm somehow honoring the lineage of people that I've descended from. And so that's, getting at the heart of what we're all doing here on this planet, on this flat earth, that I think kind of ties it all full circle. So,
Yeah.
talk to me about the future of Weaver Crafted. Where do you see yourself, like, say, a year from now, 5 years from now?
I want to learn how to continue to like make shoes, if
Mhm.
like resoling them and then maybe reconstructing them and changing them into the flat style.
Okay.
I think that I there's a market slowly transitioning into that where it's heritage, more functional footwear, and
Mhm.
I want to get into that, and then doing the wallets and like the little knickknacks, I think that's where I want to go. I don't want to go too far into something crazy, maybe some bags.
Okay.
But I'm I think I want to try to make like a blazer jacket with like leather horsehide. But
Ooh.
that's more of a if I can do it.
Yeah. There,
What
there was
about
a
you?
guy at the Stitch Down boot camp that had one. He was wearing it. A
Mm,
shirt made out of leather that he made. It was absolutely amazing. Just threw on an undershirt with it and
hmm
so cool.
hmm
But also, I want to add a little bit more context to how Jen relates to my channel. Jen actually designed the intro for my channel. It is absolutely perfect. It's 10 seconds, and at the start of every video, that came straight from Jen. So thank you, Jen, for that. That is huge.
You're welcome.
She's an expert editor, expert video creator. Yes, I'm very forever indebted to you for that.
I had a really great time. I hope we do this again, and I wish I was a little more prepared. I'm just
Yeah,
a
no,
little
it's good.
nervous. But yeah, this was great fun. I wish we could have more like crazy topics to talk about. But yeah, this was fun.
Well, we delved into a couple,
hmm
and we'll do it again because yes, absolutely. I love exploring and getting outside of doesn't like to be typecast as just like a boot guy.
hmm
I have so many other interests, and so do you. So yeah, it's fun to explore this and share it with the community.
Yeah.
Hopefully, they respond well.
Yeah, and if you guys have any crazy conspiracies that we should look into or want to talk about, let us know in the comments.
Yeah, that we're gonna talk about next time.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes. So this has been a lot of fun. Jen, thank you so much again for taking the time today for this extensive schizophrenic boot talk. That
Yeah.
is kind of a boot talk, but more of a let's get caught up on what the hell
Yeah.
happened over the last 4 years. But anyways, thanks so much again. We'll definitely have you on again here soon. Links to all of Jen's social media will be in the descriptions. So go give her a follow and check out her content. She's always coming out with amazing stuff. So, anyways, Jen, thanks so much again, and I will talk to you next time.